like to think I had a pretty typical high school experience, dealing with MCQs and SAQs and DBQs and social cues, grinding my extracurriculars, starting a cult, attending school dances. Okay, so maybe not all of those. I didn't attend any school dances. I mean, what do you take me for? Someone socially competent? But no, while my peers were getting dates and getting those dates to go in their fancy clothes to homecoming on the weekends, I was dressed up in formal clothes to go to speech and debate tournaments. And somehow, amidst the turmoils of learning to become a speech and debater, I had somehow started a cult dedicated to pouring water onto trees. Yep, there's me and my loyal disciples, engaging in behaviors of worship. See, it all started with a game of Super Mario Party. And if you've ever played, you know it's essentially like a digitalized board game. And like any other good board game, it is basically all luck. So after I shot from dead last to first place, I was crowned as the one favored by Lady Luck, just as an offhanded comment. I have never taken anything offhanded in my life. I decided I was not just going to enjoy Lady Luck's favor. I was going to curry it, which is what led me to this pouring water behavior. You see, at every speech and debate tournament, before I get to discover whether I made the final elimination round, I would go outside, get some water, and pour it on the nearest bush or tree, and pray that Lady Luck would please bless my speech results. And, shockingly, it was working. Over more than a dozen tournaments, I broke to finals in at least one event every single time. And the practice started catching on. As you can tell, the rest of my team started adopting my bizarre rituals, seeing that it was surprisingly effective, and soon I was leading half a dozen of my fellow speech and debaters outdoors to pray to Lady Luck at every tournament. But while the cult was essentially in a life of its own, I took this a step further. I started praying before every important, significant event in my life, whether it be an important presentation, a school project, or a big exam. This all came to a head at my first calculus midterm in college, where I was running late and I was like, I'm sure it doesn't really matter if I put any water on a tree, because to be honest, I'm just going to do math. It has nothing to do with whether I pray to Lady Luck. That midterm single-handedly broke my 2 years of no crying streak. But as I was bawling my eyes out over horizontal asymptotes, I came to wonder, does Lady Luck actually have an effect on my success? Surprisingly, yes, she does, but most likely not in the way you think. Stanford's Department of Psychology conducted a study investigating a gene that is known to make someone be less proficient at exercise. So first, they had all of their volunteers run on a treadmill and then measured their CO2 to O2 exchange rate, which is just a measure of how well you're doing cardiovascular activity. And then they genotyped their volunteers to see who actually had this gene deficiency. Afterwards, they split the volunteers into two groups, regardless of whether they actually had the deficiency. Then, one group were told that they had the deficiency and the other group wasn't. Then, all of them ran the treadmill test again. And here are what the results show. This red bar is the group that were told they were genotyped for being deficient. And let's remember, these people weren't actually all deficient. And all of them performed significantly worse, while the other group had a slight marginal improvement from being told that they were more protected for exercise. For reference, that dot over there is how much this gene actually matters in the grand scheme of things on how fit you are, and that dot to your right, shows how much being told about this matters. Which means that overall, this proves that what you believe to be true about yourself has great impacts, even on your physical being. It's not just these volunteers felt more tired or gave up more easily. No, their bodies were physically less proficient at processing oxygen when they believed they were going to be less proficient. And so, after learning this, I came to wonder, how can we take this principle, the idea of the placebo, the idea that having a belief and an anticipation something will happen will change our outcomes? And so, as your favorite novice cult leader, I come to present to you the 3.5 steps to gaslighting yourself into success. So first, step 1, the trigger. The trigger in a medical setting is what you think as the saline solution, or the pill that does absolutely nothing. When you're trying to manufacture your own placebo, such as in my case, putting water in the local foliage, it's important to keep 3 things in mind. First, it has to be something intentional. You have to take intention to take this action. Second of all, it has to have something with a clear purpose and preferably with a clear reminder. And finally, it has to be very easy, because if it's not easy, you won't do it. Now, this makes clothing a good choice. It is well documented that putting on a certain types of clothes puts you in a certain kind of mindset. For example, the Journal for the Experimental Social Psychology discovered that when 70 participants were taking a memory test and half were given lab coats and half were not given lab coats, the people wearing lab coats did better. However, it's especially notable that only those told that it was a lab coat and not something as associated with good intelligence, such as a painter's smock, saw this improvement, which showed that by having this constant reminder that they were representing someone smart and someone competent, they were actually embodying these traits in themselves. In the book, The Alter Ego Effect, Todd Herman takes this a step further, claiming that it's possible to make yourself almost like a whole alter ego, a version of yourself that's more competent, confident, and assured by putting on a piece of clothing that moves you to the mindset. Just like Clark Kent tearing off his shirt to reveal that he's actually wearing spandex and his underwear on the outside, suddenly becoming Superman, you too can unlock your better identity, just preferably with your shirt intact. We can see examples of celebrities using this, such as Kobe Bryant, who had the identity of the Black Mamba, which he took on when he was on the court. And he claimed that this made him more focused and a better basketball player, while separating it from his day identity. The clothing and the action of stepping onto the court put him into a whole different mindset that was able to change his performance. And so we move on to step 2, the ritual. The trigger is only as effective as the number of times you use it. And the main magic of the placebo effect in gaslighting yourself into success is that you can incorporate your placebo to not just be an element that you do, but rather an element of your identity, of your strategy. Once you begin associating your trigger with doing well, you will then do even better. For example, whenever I need to clean, I put on a nice skirt, I put on a blouse, and my mom tells me, "Why are you dressed up in formal clothes to dig socks out from under your bed?" And while this might be a little bit silly, the reality is, by putting on a different set of clothes and doing this every time I need to clean, I associate dressing up nicely as my cleaning attire. But this puts me into the mindset to be able to clean. Furthermore, Harvard Medical School explored this in a study where they took pills that were literally labeled placebo and gave them to people who were suffering from migraines. Even though the pills had placebo written on them, the migraine sufferers still saw a 50% reduction in pain. It was the action, the ritual, the daily taking of the pill that was resolving some of their pain, and not just any actual active ingredient. So, it's with consistency and discipline that we are best able to even trick ourselves into doing better. Which brings us to step 3, the belief. Arguably the most core component of the placebo effect. Because the idea is that by believing you are something greater, you become something greater. Hypnosis is an altered state of mind, where you're essentially just more suggestible. But what do you think is the number one factor to whether someone can be hypnotized? It's whether they believe they can. And for the same reason, people who believe they can manifest good luck their way, or that they believe that they can pray to Lady Luck and get better results in their speech, are the ones who will actually see this. It is by believing more than any of the other elements that we are actually able to achieve great success. But finally, the point 5 that almost everybody was likely questioning: the reality. Here's the fact. As soon as I stepped on the stage and started my talk, you were probably thinking, but it's just a placebo. I've named it as the placebo. And really, there is no concrete tie to being able to change your fate at the drop of a hat. And you know what? This is true. You will not magically learn chemistry, you will not fix your broken leg, and you will not wish your way into that job you wanted but that interview you botched. But here's the other reality. You probably aren't achieving most of your goals anyways. Because here is the reality. Whatever you want to do is hard to do, and you probably haven't gotten very far at it. But how much of the reason has been because you've been holding yourself back? For example, if you want to start a business, you can't start by thinking, most startups come to fail. You can't begin by thinking that I might go bankrupt over this. I'm not saying that it's not important to have contingency plans, but when we make the contingency plan the first plan, we rob ourselves of the ability to take that leap to actually achieve the things we want. Because you cannot hurt yourself by believing you can, but you do hurt yourself by believing you can't. So even if it seems silly, the placebo can be the first step in setting your intention of believing you can. And maybe you can, whatever it be. I want to get into medical school. Maybe you want to write a book. You want to start a business. All of it starts by believing you can. So, I'm not a theologist. Maybe Lady Luck is only as real as the placebo she gives me. Maybe throughout all of human civilization, we've all been worshiping the same higher power, and I've just given her the name Lady Luck. Or maybe, who knows, I am the prophet and Lady Luck is the one true religion. I don't know. This is not my job, and frankly, it doesn't matter very much. So, do whatever makes you more successful. Go put on a lab coat. Go put on a nice skirt and go clean. Go eat a Tic Tac and write placebo on the can. I don't know, whatever it is. But sometimes the Lulu really is the Salulu. Thank you.